boom, 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 boom,
Greetings
boom,
and welcome to
boom.
Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. A warp 5, 6, 7, 8. I am your captain, Myrriah Gossett. With me on the view screen, we have
Dagnabbit. I was gonna try to do a void thing, but I've caught between that and a warp me. Warp me.
Paul Satachin.
Fall me to touch it. Boom, boom. Warp me.
Clyde, unfortunately, is stuck on a shuttle, so we will see if he makes it at some point tonight, but he sends his regards. Tonight, we are talking about some of our favorite moments from Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2. But before we jump in, Paul, we got a new trailer today for Lower Decks. Did you get a chance to check it out?
I did.
Thoughts, reactions?
I mean, I think it looks good. It
Yeah.
looks good. It looks like as I was watching season 2 again, I was like, oh, and I know we said this last time, but it is so rewatchable.
Very rewatchable.
I was like, oh, this is absolutely my favorite episode of season 2, and then like, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, oh, actually, so blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I'm excited for season 5. I saw Mike McMahon say they had to edit out a lot of stuff in frames for the trailer to not give away a running joke from the season. So I'll be excited to try to do a side by side of what was going on. But it looks funny, it looks chaotic in all the best ways, as Lower Decks is. So I am just continuously hyped for the new season, and continuously sad it is our last season with this crew.
Yeah.
If you are just joining us for our Lower Decks coverage, welcome. We're excited to have you. We hope you follow us the whole way through. If you enjoy our coverage, you can subscribe and hit that follow button for automatic downloads. That helps us a lot. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And Paul, if people really like this content, what else can they do to come hang out with us and similar fans?
First of all, they can join our Patreon.
Mhm.
For just $2 per episode. You can help us at patreon.com/Star Trek Pod.
Indeed, you get access to our Slack channel. You also get our episodes commercial free, so you can make sure you are subscribed over at the Patreon. And if you're hanging out with us live tonight on YouTube, hang out with us in the chat. Tell us what some of your favorite moments were. I have a few messages from the menagerie we'll get into here at the top. But yeah, please let us know your thoughts, opinions. You can type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in all caps if it is a question, comment, or something you want us to pay attention to. Otherwise, have fun chit-chatting with fellow fans in the chat here on YouTube. We appreciate y'all. Okay. Before we dive into our list of some of our top favorite moments from season 2, any general thoughts you can remember you had going into this season? Any initial reactions you might have had? I remember the big thing was, at the beginning of the season, we have Boimler has left the crew, and so it was kind of the ticking plot line of when was he going to return to our gang. But yeah, which ends up resolving itself. But it was fun for a little while to get some like B and C storylines hanging out over on the Titan. What did you think about the split?
I think I remember watching at the end of season 1, and then they go then Boimler leaves. And then when season 2 was about to start, I go like, oh, I wonder how they're gonna pull him back. And I was going like, oh, they probably made a mistake in season 1 because like they probably thought like, oh, this is gonna be really like a cliffhanger kind of thing, but it really wasn't. It's like
Yeah.
when at the end of season 5, like uh what's his name? Cisco loses Deep Space Nine.
And you're
But
like, he's not really going to lose
but the
Deep Space
but
Nine.
the show is called Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna get back, and so I remember that, and I was like, oh, okay, well we'll see what they do as long as they stay funny, and they were able to.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh well, I wasn't like surprised, although I was really surprised when like some of the cuts they brought in, which are some of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. There's some good moments there. I'll share a couple of folks from our let's see, from our messages from the menagerie. We've got Ms. Hey Ms, thanks for
Hey,
hanging out.
Miz.
Lower Deck Season 2, Wage Duge is one of my all-time favorite Trek episodes. Amazing combination of world building and expanding and jokes. Also, Tahana only needing the box and will always have Tom Paris made me laugh so hard as a former cat owner. And then Karen also agrees Wage Duge, I can't say Duge, maybe my favorite ep through the first 3 seasons. It's so fun. I feel like the device of the lower decks and each species is so clever. The first time I watched and the Borg cube came up, I laughed so hard. Uh, and then continues to say, First Contact is so exciting. The finale was really brave. It's a worthy cliffhanger. Season 2 is so stinking strong. I Excretus and the Borg babies. Shari Bing Bong is just so terrific. So many others as well. Lower Decks is just a solid series. It may beat out most series for consistent standard, I think. I feel like that's a common thread we've had these last 2 kind of seasonal recaps, is like we've been talking about the rewatchability of
Hmm.
this show and how it's like I've been following, we watched all of these once. I've watched most of them at least twice, and now this is like the revisit has been really fun, and
Hmm.
I'm glad I've been able to spend the time kind of going back through the seasons. But okay, Paul, why don't you give me your first pick for your top favorite moments?
Well, I am big fan of Shaka when the walls fell, or episode 2 where we meet our new security officer,
Uh-huh.
uh,
Kayshawn, his eyes
Keishan.
open.
That's right. But like every time that they do something like something something at Tanagra or blah 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 blah, it's just it's it's so ridiculous, and it's so like so deep into the culture of Star Trek. Like that was one that episode is one of the uh like top 10, what you call it, uh
Like
uh
Easter egg episodes?
well, next
Or
generation episodes.
okay.
I forgot what it's called, the one where they're talking in metaphor anyway.
Mhm.
uh because it's so different, and so like there is like science fiction, and then science fantasy.
Mhm.
And just like when you watch the movie Arrival, like the idea of actually learning to talk to someone from an alien culture is so like integral.
Mhm.
And Star Trek just glosses over that with universal
Universal.
translator.
Mhm.
But like in some ways it's so science fictiony, but it's still so Star Trek. It completely permeates, like uh the what you call it, the culture of Star Trek. And so when they're doing this and they're making jokes with this, like this episode, it just hits all the right like neurons or something.
Yeah, I
But
like that he's, like, aware. He's like, "Oh, right, like, you don't quite get like, I know
yeah.
I'm technically speaking in your language, but
Hmm.
you don't get what I'm actually saying," which is also I feel like, is so relatable for anyone who speaks multiple languages
Hmm.
or like attempts to speak multiple languages. It's like the the thing you're trying to say, the turn of phrase has no direct translation.
Oh yeah.
And it's such a common practice, so I appreciate that it comes in a silly funny way like they do here in Lower Decks. Q and J is I forgot to put the menage, but how can you not laugh at Mariner ending the hollow sim in I Excretus by spacing the crew to avoid seeing them all naked?
Like of course that's going to be in my what you call it, my
Your
top
top.
5. But
Hmm.
like I'll just say, like my number 3 is Mariner being stomped by horses, by the horse. I mean that's just, it's just so crazy, right? Like
It's bananas.
it's like BANANAS, like that's how bananas it is, like it's
You got to spell it out completely.
yeah. So yeah.
Um,
So we jumped a little bit, but
we
like
jumped a little. My I guess like number 5 to me, so funny, was the prank calling Artemis.
hmm yeah,
I
that,
it,
that's great.
it's just it's those types of like silly little Easter eggs that I just find so amusing, and a thing that like only this show can do is be like, oh yeah, of course we can just hop over and see Artemis. Not a big deal. Like this is so fun and silly.
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's hilarious. And
What's your
you
next
know,
one?
it's like with Artemis,
Mhm.
Artemis, once again, so deep, so integral because that's where Yara
Right.
dies, right? And
Yes, yes.
it's just out of nowhere. Uh, this is so I think that it's just this moment made me laugh, you know, real loud. It's the we'll always have Tom Paris,
Mhm.
and like Boimler doesn't have access to any
Yeah, the
of the
computer.
the computer, so they doesn't recognize him. But ultimately, at the end, the climax of his storyline is he falls out of the roof. He's all soiled up, and he looks like a Kazon. And like Tom Paris goes, Kazon,
Punches him in the face, and he loves it.
and I was like, it was just hilarious because like you're like or like oh absolutely. Like here, they're making fun of like Tom Paris's trauma. Not that he ever had trauma before, but like but in this particular instance, he has like so it's pretty funny.
I agree. Yeah, that whole episode is just layers upon layers of silliness. I love Boimler not being able to get into anything. I love the journey of the plate. It's overall a really fun app. In oh, that's also yeah, we'll get there too. Um, my next one is the bar moment where you have
Mhm.
Kirk and Spock carved in the bar with, and
Sure.
then Mariner and Boimler get carved in the bar, and I just thought it was like I like when the show has those little moments of heart where you're like, oh right, like these are like you're my number one. Like I think it's fun to watch them grow together as a little mini crew on the larger community of the ship. And that's just a fun episode because you have
Doublers.
the doublers, yes,
Mhm.
which are just so silly. And I loved how the bridge crew of the Cerritos, like they also couldn't get into the party, but the bar ended up being the way better party. And like, I don't know, it was just like a nice heartfelt moment of
Like
like a pretty silly episode.
my favorite like deep track in there is like oh Okana, and so Okana is there for another like pirate smuggler captain esque in some random one episode and,
Yeah.
he goes, he's not even Starfleet.
He's just at the DJ.
Yeah, exactly.
And and I like when the breadcrumbs we get of Mariner's backstory where she's
Mhm.
like she was Becky,
Yeah, yeah.
like Becky, I should put you in the bridge for what you've done to me. Yeah, I think that's a fun episode. What's your next pick?
Like we already the number three is stomped by
Mhm.
so we jumped
Stop by
ahead of
horses, I
stop by horses.
excuse.
Yeah,
That yeah, that whole episode is a fun I feel like is a good beginning too of how we've seen Captain Freeman grow over the series because
sure,
we
sure.
really got to see how she reacted to sort of like additional leadership coming onto the ship. And I think how she reacts now would be a little bit different. But I enjoy that we get to see both our upper deckers and our lower deckers have like really strong character arcs. And it's like so much more apparent to me on this watch, like going back and seeing where
Mhm.
they've started and then where we kind of know them at the end of season 4 and now going into 5.
Totes.
My
Your number three.
next fave is the anomaly consolidation day, where
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
you have Boimler gets his makeover
Uh-huh.
moment, and then everyone else is having to pick up the trash. And then I think that's the one too where the C plot is where Freeman goes down to negotiate with the pack leads and they keep calling her Janeway.
Uh, yeah,
I
that's
think
the
that's all the same
yeah.
episode. Um, but I just enjoyed seeing all of the different ways the anomaly reacted. I also thought it was great to see like that switch for Tendy, where Tendy's like,
Mhm.
I am always trying to make everything like the best and the nice moment.
For sure.
And then she holds on to that box and becomes that giant crazy bug creature.
For sure.
And Boimler has to be absolutely ridiculous to get her to change back.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it was a nice episode to talk like that really showed the like spectrum of qualities that actual captains have to have in Starfleet rather than like what everyone thinks they have to be. And I thought that was a fun way to subvert the expectation.
I think one of my favorite things in that episode was when uh Boimler kind of goes with the mean girls,
The red
and
shirts.
the red shirts, and he goes like, "You call yourself the red shirts?"
Yeah. Yeah, because we wear red shirts.
Yep.
Yeah, I also really liked how when Boimler was trying to de-escalate Tendi, he kept asking for everything from the replicator hot.
Yeah, yeah.
So excuse me. So he'd be like, a bowl of beans, hot, 27 sundaes and a cake at various temperature levels, and then like a hot fudge, like everything was hot. And so it was just that classic Boimler scream constantly.
Yep, yep, yep.
Great episode. What's your next pick?
Well, number two, like I Excretus would be actually my number one episode, if not for the fact of my number one. But like the number two is actually Boimler doing 100% against the Borg. Like, like I mean, it's just like one of those things where uh it's rare to get to see Boimler succeed at the beginning. Like
Mm-hmm.
Boimler normally struggles, right? And then learn something, but in this one instance, Boimler is just excellent.
Mm-hmm.
He's like super excellent, and as excellent as he is, it's not enough. So he keeps on going. So it hits it scratches his damage
Mm-hmm.
until he gets 100%, and then he has to like undo all the work that he did that was excellent in
Oh
comparison
my
to the
god.
crew.
All of the Borg babies in that
Yeah,
episode
he goes,
is just
that's right. And he goes, and I taught the queen empathy.
when he busts through and like the visuals of that episode are extreme. Like so much of it is the visuals of that episode
Mhm,
that are funny. Um, yeah, which I love because it is the show is so joke dense like
mhm.
verbally, but I really appreciate like the way the animators and the director and like the whole team really work together to give you so many visual gags as well. And I think that's such a strong part of the show.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I hear you.
Chippy says everything about Boimler's tasks are so great. The music is everything. Um,
Notes.
Naked Time.
Naked time.
Naked Time. Okay, my next pick was the Mariner and Tendi girls mission, which is like
Sure.
subset the Dr. Tahana only needs the box, because I think it was such a smart way for them to subvert the idea of like, oh right, we usually never pair these two
Mhm.
characters together. We have like our standards here, but now with Boimler out of the picture in the first few episodes, it's like, how does this sort of get reestablished? What's the new norm of the group?
Sure.
um and I loved that they had to like fight in order to get to know each other a little bit better, because I think it
Sure.
is so often the idea of like, oh, like we have to get along in order to like each other. But I think it's a stronger way to get to the other side of friendship if you can figure out like um what like through the valleys of friendship is where you actually find friendship rather than the peaks.
Well, if you say so.
I think they don't have to be deep valleys. It's like,
Uh-huh,
there's ebbs
uh
and flows in every relationship.
Well, it sounds to me like you're trying to say
But
something about our relationship. It's great, Mariah. I love it. I love it.
everything
Airing
is
out
great
airing out our dirty laundry on air.
on
Great.
pod.
Uh,
It's happening now. Get
that's right.
ready,
That's right.
everybody. But it's
Uh,
also the episode we first get the mention of the mistress of
As a
the.
Witch's constellation. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah. Like, oh yes, Teddy.
Yeah, we first get kind of this inklings of her true standing in her culture, and then also like our continued knowledge of her badassery continues to grow in that episode. But it has so many funny silly moments too, like when they pull out the first like big wood sculpture and they're
Mhm,
like, oh my god, look at all the scratch marks, and they're like, ew, you're holding this for it's very like sleepover slumber party vibes.
mhm.
And then like the second it breaks and Tendi just goes into like insanity mode. And yeah, just the end still makes me like, I know it's coming, that she only wants the box, but the
Mhm.
second she gets in and does that little cat like I'm laughing out loud every single
Love it,
time.
love it.
It's great. Okay. Next pick, Paul.
Numero uno. Now, like, Ice Cretus is arguably the best episode of the season. Next to, uh, I think a lot of people said that I can't pronounce it, Wedge.
Wej
Yeah,
Wej yeah.
yeah, and so, like, the lower decks of lower decks.
Yeah.
So, like, just so for those who may not know, Lower Decks is an episode in Next Gen where we see our lower deckers for the first time. These four
Mhm.
people: one Guyan apprentice, one wharf apprentice, blah 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 blah. Anyway, so this episode does lower decks on a Klingon ship, on a Vulcan ship,
Mhm.
on a Borg ship, but the funniest part is when they go to the lower decks of a Packlet ship. Because so here is everyone, doing their thing. They're doing their lower deck things. They're in battle. We cut to the Packlet ship, and you see the Packlids. And in the background, in the stock room, it goes red alarm, red alarm, red alarm,
Isn't
which
that
is
your
now my ringtone.
I was like, that's where it came from.
Red alarm, red alarm. I go like, that is so funny. And then, like, the scene itself is like hilarious because the Packlet there's a red alarm, and their thing goes, "I'm hungry," and then another one goes, "You should eat food." It goes, "You're smart." It's just so crazy,
It's
and and
so crazy.
and here, like, yes, there were the Packlids in Next Gen, but like Lower Decks has really just expanded on the universe in a way that's hilarious and it's just
Yeah, I
it's just really
remember
good.
during season 2, we had a lot of discussion on the pod about, like, the representation of the Packlids and, like, is it essentially, like, is it problematic? And it was something we would talk about a lot about, like, is it making fun of folks with, like, intellectual disabilities, or is it, like, we just don't understand this culture, and so it's, like, showing up as this, like, primitive, quote unquote, like lower intellectual space. And I remember having a lot of that of those conversations. And I still think on like second watch, they're probably my least favorite plot line. Like I know they're such a big driver of the whole season is like the Pack-led conflict, but I felt like you could really sub in anything else and it probably would have also have worked in a similar way.
No,
But
I think
I
like the
get it.
pack, like for me, like, I think in the Star Trek universe, power and ambitions for power and ambition's sake is stupid.
Hmm.
I think ultimately that's what the Packlids represent.
Right.
And I think like,
Right. The idea of the biggest helmet.
yeah, exactly. And so like it's all, it basically represents how like stupidity doesn't really fit in the future. It's always a nuisance. Like, and I think that's how they are, like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's stupidity though, because I think there's a lot of things that are very silly and stupid in Lower Decks, and that's part of what makes it charming and lovely.
so like when I say stupidity, I really mean like that blind ambition for just power.
Right.
And like it's just
Power for power's sake. Yeah.
exactly like, just I want the biggest helmet,
Mhm.
I want bigger bombs, I want uh
I
for
wanna
no,
see your blast shields.
like ultimately it's like it comes down to survivalist primitive thinking. And where you're going like, oh, here is this idea of like bigger is better and stronger is better and all these things are better without any context of why to have those things.
Mhm.
So in that way, like, it's actually a really good foil for the utopian
Right.
of the Federation. Like, in some ways, like, you take the Klingons or the Dominion or any adversary that the Federation has, like, on some level, you might not like what they do, but you go, I understand it. I respect it. But like, but there are, but if like, if Star Trek is to represent facets of our future and not facets of our present that will help us deal with our today.
Right. Like I could
But
very clearly identify who is the metaphor for the pack. That's right.
so in that way, like you go like, oh, like you're just making things more difficult, and you're not really getting what you want
Hmm.
because you don't really have a real want aside from this very base thing. Anyway, like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could defend the Packlets. Like I think the Packlets are actually a really good use of the first two seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what is still fun about Lower Decks is like, yes, of course it's funny and there's heart and there's like the character arcs, but I do, and like we talk about it a lot more when it is like the live action show, but it's like to me, Star Trek is at its best when it is making commentary on today's
Sure.
society. And I think Lower Decks also accomplishes that in many of its episodes as well. It has a lot of pretty universal themes, I think, that are fun to grab onto. Um, I had Weisha just my number one as well. For the season. I think it's really great. I think the finale, First Contact, is a really great finale and like a great
Mhm.
cliffhanger going into the third season. And then I had a couple of, I guess just one honorable mention this time, but which is Ransom's giant head.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
I love when we get to back reference the original
Like what
series.
they call it, what they call it, like he's
He's gone like strange energies
yeah, it's like he like yeah, no.
causes him to become like godlike,
Oh,
egotistical. I
oh
love
yeah,
that he was just building a gym like on the planet.
no, no, like if I had godlike energies, I'd be very ransom-esque.
You just like doing curls, getting big
Like
biceps,
I'm
getting swole.
for all of it, for all of it. Like I'm just so vain. I mean, look at me.
I'm so vain. Any honorable mentions or other moments from the show you wanted to bring up?
I think.
Oh, the Mugatu episode I think is pretty fun too. The amount of poo that uh oh my gosh, how did we forget to talk about the return of a bridge crew member
Shaq, the
with
Shaq appearance.
Shax? Yeah, when Shax details
Mhm.
the mountain.
Yeah, the Black Mountain. You know Black Mountain, right? Well, it's where you blah
Yeah,
blah.
and then just the sheer horror on Rutherford's
Yeah.
face.
Uh, uh, I'm not the biggest fan of the Mugatu episode. I mean, it's all good. It's just like
Mhm.
it's silly, and I like
Yeah.
how the resolution is like, oh, here's a PowerPoint.
I know, but I do. For a board game person, you're not intrigued at the idea of a Ferengi deal board game.
That what's it called?
Rules of
Choir.
acquisition.
No, there's a term. There's the name for it. Why am I blanking? It's what is it called? There's a choir. There's evade. Like I know the rules for it, but I just don't know the name. Like it's blanking it. Evade. Confront. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look it up. You keep on going.
Okay, I'll keep talking. The other thing I wanted to uh bring up is the episode where Billups has to try not to lose his virginity.
Sure.
I
Game of
thought
Thrones.
was the Game of Thrones reference. It's also so funny to me. So Paul Scheer, who voices Billups, the woman who voices his mom on Lower Decks is his wife,
Oh
June
really?
Diane Raphael. And I was like, that is also such a funny, like inside baseball joke to the whole Tongo compromise. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
You've got
Tongo.
things.
Yeah, Tongo. Well, I'm confusing Tongo and Dabo. I wanted to say
Oh,
Tongo,
okay.
but then but like I
Yeah,
thought,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Tongo. Tongo is great.
But I found that to be really silly. Also Portendy thinking Rutherford was dead again in
Or
that
Tendi.
episode. Portendy. She went through a lot this season. Um, yeah. Again, so rewatchable, so many fun, silly moments. I have a great time rewatching this whole series.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, any other highlights to mention? I know
I
it's kind
mean,
of a quick episode, but we're just doing the highlights. There's so much, y'all. I mean, I know it's like we're coming up on it soon. Next week we'll be covering seasons 3 and 4, so prepare for 10 picks each.
that's right.
So it'll be a longer
Like we're
episode
like,
next week.
normally Clyde is here, and he's a real windbag. He just keeps on talking and talking and talking. Oh, here's my favorite.
Yeah.
Like during Excretus when the bridge crew was in the cargo bay. They goes, "Did you see a cube pass by?"
uh,
Oh no, the Jemadar. That's pretty funny.
it's great. I think I'm gonna rewatch I Exodus tonight
Yeah,
again.
it's just so good. It's
It's so
so good,
good.
so good.
It's fun. Swapping duties. It's a good time. Everyone has fun. But yes, we'll be back next week for seasons 3 and 4 coverage, and then we have the season 5 premiere on the 24th. I'm so excited. I'm so glad TV is like coming back. We got Abbott Elementary is back now. The English teacher's on. The How to Die Alone. Anyway, I was in a big TV slump, and now I feel like it's back, baby.
It's back. One of my favorite bits of the trailer, last trailer is Harry Kim tag at the end.
Oh, yes. That's I was like, I felt like there was something we didn't talk about, we
Uh,
needed to talk about.
like
You
the
all are still ensigns.
yeah, oh my god, that's messed up. And I go, I know,
It's so
7 years and he's still an ensign. Oh my god, he must be the worst Asian ever.
I'm excited to see what they do with that in the season. I think it'll be a great time. Yes, so we'll be back live. Keep dropping those messages to the menagerie. We love hearing it. I know our patrons have been doing the rewatch of Lower Decks as well in preparation, so you can come hang out in there and chat with other Trek fans as you're recapping and rewatching Lower Decks in prep for season 5. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and Spotify. Visit StarTrekPod.co to find links to anywhere to watch or listen to the show, as well as links to our Patreon. Thank you, Karen, for helping out with the Twitter/X, that hellscape. Appreciate you being over there. And yeah, we'll see you all next time, y'all. Live long and prosper.
Bye everyone. Pew pew pew
Bye.
pew 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 pew. I'm Clyde.